Mikhailo, look, we're talking about the fact that these days Ukraine honors the memory of the victims of the Holodomor, which in fact was carried out by the Stalinist regime in 1932-1933. And then I remembered one report. It is called Agriculture Weaponized: the illegal seizure and extraction of Ukrainian grain by Russia. This is a report prepared by Compliance's Starvation Mobile Justice Team of the Global Rights Compliance Foundation. And this report indicates that in fact the Russian Federation, even before the full-scale invasion, was already preparing to carry out certain operations related to the famine, essentially by exporting grain and infrastructure that was necessary in order to guarantee the agro-industrial security of our state. Mikhailo, I have a question for you. Tell me, what exactly is connected with this policy, not even of aggression, but of genocide in relation to Ukraine? Thus, in essence, today's Putin's Russia uses patterns that were used during the Soviet Union. This is where we should draw parallels.
Это связано с животной ненавистью к вам лично. Ко мне лично, ко всем жителям Украины, гражданам Украины.
This is due to an animal hatred towards you personally, towards me personally, towards all citizens of Ukraine. This is an indestructible quality. They hate us fiercely. They didn't come here to seize territory, land, or anything else. They came here to kill. They came to finish what they did not finish. You are talking about 1932, 1933, but it is about what they have always done. The Russian Federation doesn't have the slightest sentimental feelings towards the post-Soviet space, and especially towards Ukraine. And therefore, of course, this war is predetermined by the same prerequisites that have always determined Russia's attitude towards Ukraine: destruction on a platform of personal hatred. Therefore, you are now talking about this intention, the systemic intention to steal grain as cruelly as possible and create here the preconditions for hunger, again, for technological hunger, and so on. Let's take, for example, what they did with the systematic extermination of people in those territories through an absolutely elaborate system of torture chambers, which is throughout the entire territory, throughout the occupied territory. Or, in addition, the systematic destruction of infrastructure or civilized living conditions, which were completely different in Ukraine from the Russian outback. And of course, this all indicates that they came to destroy only. And that's why it is surprising to me when someone says, let's negotiate with Russia. Sure, you must negotiate with people about the fact they could not kill you due to the fact that you resisted, defended your homes, your families, could not kill you right away. Let's talk to them so that they get adjustments to them, to these genocidal practices, and finish us off. This is the reasonable behavior of reasonable, let's say, societies. To give the opportunity to the killer, who manifestly demonstrates this, to give it the opportunity to finish what it started. Well, then accordingly, of course, there are no compromise solutions with Russia, and there cannot be. Only one must survive. I mean, it's either the political system of Russia, the one that we see today, and it will continue to do what it did not finish in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, and what it is doing now. Or Ukraine will survive, and then Russia will go through some kind of transformation, turn into a country of the third world, a country that is really low-tech, not very comfortable for living, little intellectual, when it is generating little of any added value to modern humanity, a raw material appendage, no matter which, and so on. In principle, it is the choice in this war, or famines, which are inevitable future for Ukraine and many other countries.
I thought it was possible to approach this issue later, but you yourself remembered the latest stories related to various publications. One of the latest is Bild, citing its sources and so on and so forth. While preparing for an interview with you, I saw your positions. I saw discussions with you of different journalists, different media or bloggers and so on. And I, in principle, understand this story. Why is it like that? But I cannot understand one thing. Perhaps you can explain. When we read articles like this, why do they always talk about Ukraine? Where is Russia? Because if we're talking about equality and it says, Ukraine, you have this and this, you have such a choice. But why isn't Russia there? What can Russia do in this regard? Because it turns out that if we read these articles, then Ukraine seems to have no choice. But Putin says that he is good. It was Ukraine itself that forbade negotiations with Russia. Somehow it is very one-sided. This is not an equation. This is inequality, where the Russian Federation is always the winner.
Абсолютно вы правы, потому что это абсолютно не соответствующие реальной диспозиции тексты.
You are absolutely right, because these are texts that absolutely do not correspond to the real disposition. Texts designed for hype, and most importantly, anonymous sources who know everything, who knew everything before the war, knew everything during the war, and now know everything too. Especially they know the internal structure and internal content of the most rotten Russian management mechanism. You are absolutely right. That is, it is always somehow very strange to read this. Ukraine is forced to negotiate. Why? It has no resources it cannot resist. That is what they've been telling us for 640 days of war. Let's take war, just war. I understand that for some reason these sources of the publications, not only in Bild, but also in other publications, for some reason they analyze everything in a very strange way. For some reason they believe that a country called the Russian Federation should have lost to Ukraine in a matter of days when offensive operations began. But before that they believed that the Russian army is an army of incredible combat effectiveness, which in principle dominates not only in Europe, but in the whole world, has extensive combat experience, and accordingly it is necessary to negotiate with it. And then suddenly they say, Ukrainians, why didn't you destroy the Russian army in 3 months? And then I go back to the front line. What do you see on the front line today? We see the same entire resource is concentrated as much as possible. I emphasize not just some small resource, the entire resource that this country called the Russian Federation has. They sent everything they could collect. All these people that no one really cared for to the front line. Everything they could reactivate or take from North Korea, Iran, they sent to the front line here. They still have dominance in the air, in aviation. Where are they now? They are exactly where they were a year ago. The Russian army has made no progress. It is on the defensive. Ukraine is suppressing it, despite, again, Ukraine's current deficit. This is why, when you assess objective reality, it looks like this. Russia, with all its show-offs, with its all-large army, with all its dominance in the air, stands where it stood a year ago and will remain there until Ukraine makes it to the end in this war. That is obvious.